Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.
Wait,
It is
that doesn't
Different
sound right.
Strings,
Coming soon.
colon, a guitar adjacent podcast, colon, music that matters.
So much colon.
That's right. Take care of your colons, folks, and they'll take care of you. I am your host, Wes, and I'm here with my friend and our other host, Andy. Andy, please say hello to the whole world.
OMGHI. Hi, everyone.
Nicely done. We are going to get into the music that matters for this episode in just a second. But before we do that, in case you're, for whatever reason, just listening to music that matters and not listening to the main podcast, Andy has some new news on where to find us.
Yeah.
Well, I guess all news is new. That's why we call it news. Andy has some news on how to find us on the internet.
Is that true? Is that why we call it news? Because it's new to everyone?
Uh, Words mean things, Andy.
All right. I'm sorry. I can't go on. My mind is blown.
Yeah.
Um, but while my mind is blown, you can email us your questions, topics, suggestions, hate mail, makeup tips to different strings podcast at gmail.com. Also, different strings can be found wherever you listen to podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all that nonsense. Find us on Facebook. We are over 50. It is required that we have Facebook accounts. Just search for different strings, guitar adjacent podcasts, and please on the YouTubes, please, I beg of you, hit like, subscribe, the notification bell, comment, and do all of the things that we ask you to do. The algorithm gods demand. Wes, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. I appreciate it. And
Cheers.
it was my turn to pick for music that matters. My turn to pick for music that matters. And this one goes way back to when I first dreamed up this segment and called it Metal That Matters.
Ooh, that's right.
And our album for this trip through Music Land is the second album from the Boston quartet known as I'm just kidding. Extreme.
They were a five piece.
I know they were a five piece. We're talking about the quartet from Boston, Extreme. We're talking about their second album, which is called Extreme 2, Pornograffiti, which is a wonderful portmanteau of the words pornography and graffiti. And it I, it was funny when I mentioned this album to Andy as my pick. She said, "I don't even have to listen to that, even though I'm going to,"
So
because it's one of
context,
those albums that we still listen to all the time.
or have listened to so much that there is absolutely no need to go back through it and, like, but even though, okay, so when Wes and I come up with the music that matters picks, it is tradition that we give the album a listen,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we don't already know the album, which in Wes's case, for Wes's picks, is often true. I'm not going to lie, Wes and I do listen to very different styles of music. We have different tastes. And, it's just respectful that we would give the album a listen so that we can, opinionate, ideate, just talk about it and share our thoughts. And there's a few albums we never have to do that with. King's X is one of them. Any
Mm-hmm.
King's X album. Um, and there's also Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. There was zero reason for I listened to that album so much I could probably start singing it now, but I won't because I love you too much. Um, and this album, oh my God, Wes, I this stupid record, it is so amazing, just so amazing. I mean, their first album was not great. I did not like it. I didn't think if
Really?
only I know it's crazy. I if I had only heard that album and didn't realize they had other albums, I would have been like, I do not like this band. They are going nowhere. This
Huh.
album, it was to me, it was like next
A different band. Yeah.
good, and not just because the playing on all the albums is great, but man, the songwriting just went up so many levels. But
Yeah.
it's your
And you,
pick and you're going to talk about it, but I just want to tell you how what a great, not only was it a great pick, but so good. I didn't have to listen to it, but I did anyway
there
because it's
you go.
so fun.
Yeah. So I actually found out about Extreme because MTV had like a Battle of the Bands thing, and the prize was like a demo recording thing, and getting your video played on Headbangers Ball or whatever. And I remembered them from that. So when their first album came out, I was pretty excited about it, and you could see the seeds of where they were going. I think their first album is a little bit by the numbers. It came out in 1989, and I think that it's a perfectly acceptable album. It's not an outstanding album. There's a couple of really great songs on that album.
Mhm,
Um, Kid Ego was the big single. Of course, the song Play
mhm.
With Me that closes the album was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's played over the mall chase scene towards the end of the movie. There's a song on the first album called Watching Waiting, which is a very interesting song from a songwriting standpoint.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of the album is pretty standard stuff. So I was actually not terribly hopeful for what their second album would sound like, because for a lot of bands, the second album it's usually not their best album.
Mm.
It's the one they got signed. They'd had their entire lives to write the first album. They got signed, and then they had their first album went big. They toured for a year. They had 6 weeks to write their second album, and they recorded it in a hurry because the record label said, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
Right.
Well, I don't know what the songwriting process was, because the first Extreme album came out in 1989. The second one came out in 1990. So whatever they did, they nailed it, because this album is absolutely fantastic. It sold double platinum. They sold over 2 million copies.
Mhm.
It has what is probably the most well-known full ballad from the glam metal era, More Than Words.
Oh, without a doubt, overplayed to the extreme.
Yeah, to the point where it's parodied by other bands, by
Mhm.
other acts. Um, the But the thing I think people forget, because that song is so overplayed, is how artfully crafted it is, and especially the vocal harmonies that Gary Sharon and Nuno Bettencourt are singing. The very close, unusual harmonies that they use are
Mhm.
spread throughout this album. They're just really, really prominent on
Mhm.
More Than Words.
Yeah, the actual, I just have to really quick. The vocal harmonies in this band, Nuno is a lead singer, period.
Oh
He is
yeah, absolutely.
on his own stuff, drama gods. He sings and plays, and that dude's got a great lead vocalist voice. So basically, what you're getting in More Than Words is a duet, and the whole album, and not just the whole album, the next album is even more of that. It's so the
Yeah.
harmonies are just brilliant.
Yeah. So More Than Words obviously went to number one. That's the thing that will put their grandchildren through college, and well deserved. It's a fantastic song.
Yeah.
Um, there's another acoustic song on the album called Wholehearted. I think it's almost the last track, if not the last track.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is a
It's
full on, you know, tub stomping 12 string
Yep.
romp that I remember. That was the whole reason I wanted to get a 12 string acoustic guitar,
Me too.
so I could
And
learn how to play that song and play it right.
super dope riff, and again, more great harmonies, and the video was cool too. Like, it was a fun video.
Yeah, yeah, they're basically in their old neighborhood.
Hmm.
So, but this album is not just its acoustic songs, because it is chock full of hard rock, heavy metal riffing, playing, amazing guitar solos. The
Jesus.
probably the standout track is probably Get the Funk Out, which is kind of a goofy name for a song, but
Hmm.
this song is so good that Brian May actually called the solo out in an interview
Hmm.
and said, if it doesn't bring tears to your eyes as a guitarist, I don't know where things are.
Hmm.
He said, I could never do that. This is the guy that from Queen,
Hmm.
Brian May,
Hmm.
that guy who listened to the solo in Get the Funk Out and said, I could never do that.
And he's not wrong. It's not Brian May's territory.
No, no, he's not wrong. But it is such a good album. And
Yeah.
it's now I'll tell you, there's one thing I don't like about it, and that's some of the little skit things that are in between the songs.
Hmm.
But I don't like that on anybody's album, except for a concept album like Mindcrime.
And but this is technically a concept album in some ways.
Well, yeah, I suppose it
And
kind of is.
and and I can I say the one thing I don't like about this album?
Please hit me.
I don't like the incessant innuendo. I
Well,
think,
yeah, it's and their first album is has got a little bit of that, which of course in 2024 is a little problematic,
yeah, I get it,
you know.
but I didn't
In
like it.
19
I didn't like it
You
when
didn't
the
like it
album came,
then. Gotcha.
but
Gotcha.
it was,
Yeah, I mean,
excuse me, it was one of those things that it was like, I'm going to get past it because the music is so
the
good.
rest of it's so good. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, one of the songs is very blatantly about oral sex. I mean, there's just no two ways around it.
Even the
But
song More Than Words is, if you think about this, the lyric content, it's what do you have to do to prove that you love me more than words? It's so the whole, even the concept of the ballad is, it's everything. The whole album is about that, and it's just, it's like it gets, I don't know, like it's, what is it? Pedantic, childish, unnecessary. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. And but it's like, okay, so but it doesn't take away from the musicianship on the record in at the
no,
slightest. It's just one of the greatest. I mean, I know that it wasn't Nuno's introduction to the guitar world, but for all intents and purposes, it was such a massive hit compared to their first record that it was really his full introduction to the guitar world, and he
yeah,
was
it's
such a
definitely
monster.
yeah, it's definitely the album that broke him as a guitar hero. Um, and it was produced by Michael Wagner, who
No
I
slouch.
don't know if you, yeah, definitely no slouch. Michael Wagner, the albums that he produced during his career, he's retired now, have sold over 90 million copies.
That's all.
And one of the things that he's really well known for is his technique for basically multi-amping,
Hmm.
one signal out using multi-amps, multi-microphones to build a really thick sound.
Yep.
And he pioneered the technique that we now call reamping,
Hmm.
where you record a clean or a direct sound,
Hmm.
and then through studio and technology magic, you pump that out into an amp or amps and record that sound. So what a lot of people don't know about Michael Wagner is he was the original guitarist for the heavy metal band Accept.
Was he?
Yes. Yes, he
Oh.
was. He quit the band when he so he's German,
Hmm.
and at the time that he was a teenager, every German male had to serve 2 years in the military when they turned 18.
Hmm. Okay.
Period. It was hard to get out of. So when he did his term in the army, he was too far away to keep the band going. So he quit and the band kept going without him. Um, but then he after he got out of the military, he started working as an engineer. This is in the early 70s. He knew Don Dokken and then moved to LA in the early 80s to produce the first Dokken album. He also produced Skid Row's first album. He mixed Master of Puppets. Let that sink in for a second.
Hmm.
And he also produced or mixed albums by Motley Crue, Overkill, his old band, Accept, Great White, Striper, Poison, Alice Cooper, Megadeth, Ozzy, Dokken and Metallica, of course, White Lion, and Skid Row. So this guy has chops when it
Rock
comes to
chops when it comes
producing.
and guitar. Like he's the guy you
Yeah.
talk to get guitar tones.
And I think he was the perfect person to produce this album because one of the things that I love about this album isn't just the vocal harmonies and the amazingly solid rhythm section, rhythm work from Pat Badger and Paul Geary, Pat Badger on bass, Paul Geary on drums, but it's the stylistic swings, which a lot of people that criticize the album, you criticize that point, that it wasn't like one genre all the way straight through. But to me, that was the thing I loved about it, because that is so reminiscent of Queen's kind of early middle discography. You've got three Queen albums, especially Sheer Heart Attack, A Night at the Opera, and A Day at the Races. If you listen to those albums, you kind of get whiplash from the genre shifts
Mm.
as those albums progress.
Hmm.
And while the difference in genre isn't as drastic in this song and this album cycle from Extreme, it reminds me very much of that. There's a straight crooning song like somebody like Frank Sinatra would sing, a song called When I First Kissed You, that would not have been out of place in the 40s as a big band arrangement. you know um
Hmm.
but most of the album is hard rock, heavy metal, and it's good. It's so good. And I think the album that came after this, Three Sides to Every Story, was overshadowed, of course, by the emergence of grunge. Extreme is another band that maybe suffered a little bit from the shift to grunge, um just because of the timing.
Hmm.
But I would say Three Sides might be a better, more cohesive album.
Hmm. You can say it.
But I love Pornograffiti to the day I die. It's, to me, if somebody says, "Hey, I want to get into Extreme, what album should I get?" The answer is going to be Pornograffiti every time.
Mm.
And I just love the guitar tones that Nuno has across the album.
Yeah. Yep.
And he's one of those guys. I mean, their most recent album that just came out last year also sounds fantastic.
Hmm.
They just keep going and keep going and keep going, and they keep doing great stuff. I may be wrong on that date.
They were on break for a long time. Like there was
Yeah,
a
they were
long.
doing, yeah, it was from 2008 to 2023, between albums of new music,
Yeah.
um, Paul Geary got out of being in a band.
Hmm.
Mike Mangini played with Extreme for a little while, but Paul Geary, I think, got into like management
Yeah. Artist management.
instead of, yeah, and has done really well. But I'll tell you, so this era of Extreme, between Pornograffiti and Three Sides to Every Story, is is what I think of as their golden age, their peak, their absolute peak. Their newest album came out in 2023. It's called Six. Fantastic album, but it's behind those two albums for me, right? But the thing that I think cemented them in my lexicon is in 1991, Freddie Mercury died. Complications from AIDS. We all know this now.
Hmm.
The rest of the band put on a huge tribute concert and basically had everybody who was anybody come and play at this concert. So a bunch of bands came out and played their music in the afternoon. And then at night, when Queen played, they had guitar players and singers come out and play Queen songs. So you've got, Def Leppard, tons of other bands, and Extreme was there as well. Well, what Extreme did with their set is play about a 16 or 18-minute medley of Queen songs.
Hmm.
And they did them so incredibly well. The crowd was absolutely ecstatic through the whole thing. And I remember seeing an interview with, it was either Nuno or Gary, I forget who now, but they told Brian May that this is what they wanted to do with their set. And Brian said, "Oh, but you should play your songs. You should play your music. That's what people want to hear." And they're like, "This music, your music, is why we are a band." There's
Hmm.
a story that one or both of them tell about meeting, and they got into a discussion about how much they loved the second Queen album, which is called Queen 2, which I think is why they called their album Extreme 2, right? Um, and they bonded over that. And on this album, it's very clear what their Queen influence created in them. And I think on Three Sides as well. Although you have to really be a deep Queen fan to see it, because, they're
Hmm.
not doing crazy guitar harmonies, and they're not, making, uh, you know, jazz horn bands with guitar tracks and things like that. But for somebody that is as deep into Queen as I am, I see their influence on Extreme so clearly on those two albums. And that
Um,
medley they did at the Freddie concert was legit amazing work. I mean, it was just amazing.
yeah, back in the day when there was such a thing as Guitar World and Guitar Player and all those magazines, I distinctly remember an interview with Nuno Bettencourt where he professed that Queen was one of his greatest influences,
Hmm.
which added so much weight to the Brian May comment about the get the funk out solo. Like
Yeah.
when your guitar idol is now telling you that you've written one of the best crafted solos of all time, that just must be just such a
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine the honor.
Us,
So there's
dude, that bass tone. Oh,
Mhm, mhm, yeah. So, I mean, do you remember when you first heard Nuno play and heard some of those solos for the first time? Do you remember how you felt, how you reacted? Because I remember that was one of those like, okay, well, I guess I'm done playing guitar now,
yeah.
but maybe forever.
From this album, I went out and got it the day that it came out.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was one of those things where I knew what day it came out and I was there. I went to the record store after work or after school or whatever I was doing, and I bought it that very day.
Hmm. Nuno Bettencourt and this album in particular probably had is one of those pivotal, like, this will change my approach to guitar.
Hmm. Yeah,
His
absolutely.
his infusion of like funk and Motown with rock. In fact, from another interview with Nuno, I remember when they asked about his style and how he writes, he said something to the effect that he plays horn parts on his guitar.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and when you dissect his parts, you can sort of hear that. And I really love that approach. And that's his it so it was that and how he infused his rock sensibilities with funk and with Motown and the chords he uses a lot of funk and Motown chords with
Hmm.
heavy distortion. Um, and because of Michael Wagner, you can hear those chords. And I do think Nuno should go down in history as one of the most influential guitar players just because of what he brought to the table. I mean, in the pantheon of shredders, he absolutely belongs in the same school as influential as like George Lynch, Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
he brought something so unique to the table and absolutely changed what it means to be a shredder. And yet his solos are not just wank fests. They are
Hmm.
extremely well crafted. He's the kind of guitar player where when he writes a solo, the rhythm section behind it, like he writes a part behind it. Like he's not just, I'm going to solo over the chorus. Like he's writing a unique part, very orchestral. That's,
Hmm.
you hear the Queen there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, you know how Brian May would craft his solos. Like they were not just shred fests. Brian crafted, you could hear purpose behind every note. You can
Yeah.
sing all of Brian's solos. I mean, there's just something about that. And I feel like, that's how Nuno was. It was one of the most melodically talented guitar players. And he, the reason why Extreme doesn't do a lot of records, I mean, there was a lot of years between Six and the one before that. And even the albums between, before that, there was a lot of breaks, side projects. Like, no, he's just
Hmm.
he keeps himself very busy doing his other stuff. But um,
Well, he played guitar for Rihanna for a while.
he did. Yeah. That was
Yeah,
a
he
like a
was her.
full-time gig for him.
Yeah, her touring guitarist for years. I'm trying to find
Really
that when.
just he made such a mark.
Yeah, from 2009 to 2013, he played every one of her tours.
Yeah.
And what a great gig to be able to explore a different genre of music and to be respected and trusted enough by Rihanna to give him that opportunity.
It wouldn't be his first. He actually did the work he did Janet Jackson's Black Cat a long time ago.
Oh, that
And
was him? I didn't know that.
hmm yeah, he played
Oh,
on that and then he toured. Well, at least he did shows. I know he did some award shows with her when they did that song. So yeah, it's not his first foray into the pop world, and he absolutely has the cred to do it. I mean,
oh, apparently he played in a band with Perry Farrell for a little while. I wonder if he got punched at the end of that band.
no, Perry reserves all his hate for Dave.
In the this is completely off topic. I feel like we've done Pornograffiti. Everybody should be listening to that album on
If you're not,
repeat.
yeah, please do.
Um, but in the grand scheme of things, tour and or band ending with a punch up on stage, I had Oasis pegged for that.
Don't be disappointed. It could still happen.
Yeah, it could still happen, but Jane's Addiction did it first.
Wes, I um first of all, who could see this coming? I mean, except everybody. Um, but all kidding aside, you know, the I actually okay. How the band, first of all, massive credit to Dave Navarro for how he handled that situation in the moment.
Mm,
Um, so I don't know if you saw the video, but basically you see Perry has a meltdown and he did sort of have a go at Dave. He didn't like take a swing at his face. Like, I mean, he probably did throw a punch, but it was more like a body blow. But anyway, Dave just backed away and it was like he kept his cool. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. One is I think Dave has emotionally matured quite a bit. Um, he doesn't have anything to prove. He also doesn't fucking need the money or the stress. You know, he does this for the love of the music, but also I think he knows who he works with. I
yeah.
think he knows Perry better than almost anyone. They all do. And I think he knew exactly how to react in the moment. And I think the apology the band released within the next couple days after the situation was extremely well worded.
Mm,
I think, and also Perry took accountability. Now I'm sure there were lawyers involved, and I'm sure a lot of people are still very pissed about they canceled the tour.
yeah.
But how they've teed this up is that this is the result of Perry having like a breakdown, like emotion, like mental health problems. And
Yeah.
that's nothing to scoff at. Perry has dealt with drug addiction and mental health problems for decades. And you can see where that lands some people. Lead Scott Weiland comes to mind.
Hmm.
Chris Cornell comes to mind. You know,
Steven Adler.
yeah, it's you got to take care of you first, man. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter how famous you are. When shit's going down like that, you got to take care of you first. So
Yeah.
if this is what it took for Perry to get help, then I'm glad he's getting help. But it sucks, man. It just to see that shit happen like that. Like, I mean, that is the worst way for this stuff to go down. I mean, literally
Yeah.
on stage in front of
Absolutely.
thousands of people and now the world because it was on
And now,
video.
yeah, because of course somebody's pointing a cell phone at them,
Of
you know.
course, at all times. You just have to know that. Um, and now Oasis is about to go back on tour, and that's a band who famously hates each other. I mean,
Yeah, I never thought we'd see an Oasis reunion.
but I call this out because it's like it's 2024 and like we don't shy away from talking about mental health in this country
Mm-mm.
anymore. So what's going on? Like, why is everyone so angry and stressed and pissed off? Like, can we just collectively all like take some deep breaths and like, why is everyone, what is it? Is it inflation? Is it post-COVID PTSD? Like, is it what's going on, man? I feel like there's something in the air, in the water, in the food. Everyone's just so tense right now. And like we all just need to calm down. Like you and I have reason to be stressed. We're working like
Yeah.
dogs and we're losing our shit, but like these people are fucking multimillionaires. Like get it together.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that you and I can agree on is that the world would be a much more peaceful place if everybody went out tomorrow and listened to Pornograffiti.
Oh, all right. I'll shut up now.
No. I just wanted to bring it back to that before we wrapped up. I want to thank everybody for listening. I do encourage you to listen to this album. It's fantastic.
Really
It
is.
definitely had an effect on my life as a guitar player.
Mhm.
So let that be a lesson to you and enjoy it and each other and the world and all the music that we've got. And we'll see you next time right here on Different Strings, a guitar podcast.
Night night.